There is a category of garden knowledge that does not fit neatly into a single video. Not a pest treatment, not a fertilizer method, not a single dramatic secret with one villain and one buried document. Just the accumulated, practical, day-to-day wisdom that made Depression-era gardens work when nothing else was available. Small decisions repeated every single day that added up to gardens that fed families through the hardest decade in American economic history. I have spent 3 years collecting these from journals, county extension bulletins, and interviews with people in their 90s who learned to garden from parents who gardened through the Depression. What follows are 19 of them, practices that have almost entirely disappeared from modern American gardening, not because they stopped working, but because nobody had a reason to keep teaching them once cheaper alternatives appeared on store shelves. Number 1. Planting by the moon's phase. Dismissed today as superstition, but the underlying logic has a real mechanism. Gravitational pull affects soil moisture at a microscopic level, and the brightness of moonlight during the full moon phase was used by farmers without electric light to extend working hours into the evening during planting season. Whether or not the lunar effect on moisture is significant, the practice persisted because it gave families a consistent, memorable schedule for staggered planting. Number 2. Saving wood ash separately by type. Hardwood ash and softwood ash have different mineral compositions. Depression-era households kept separate buckets. Hardwood ash, higher in calcium and potassium, went to vegetable beds. Softwood ash, more acidic, went to blueberries and other acid-loving plants. A distinction almost nobody makes today because almost nobody burns wood for heat anymore, let alone sorts the resulting ash. Number 3. The barefoot soil test. Before planting, farmers walked the garden barefoot to feel soil temperature directly through their feet, since soil thermometers were not commonly available to home gardeners. Soil that felt cool and damp meant wait. Soil that felt warm through the soles of bare feet meant it was ready for warm season seeds. A crude method, but a functional one, still used by some old order farming communities today. Number 4. Hanging old metal pie tins in fruit trees. The movement and flash of light off tin in the wind startled birds enough to reduce fruit damage without netting, which most farm families could not afford. Free, reusable, and effective enough that some commercial orchards still use reflective tape for the same reason today. Number 5. Burying glass bottles neck down between rows. An old technique for passive soil watering, bottles filled with water, buried upside down with a small hole or loosely fitted cork, releasing moisture slowly into the surrounding soil over days. A primitive version of the drip irrigation systems sold today for considerably more money. Number 6. Crushed oyster or eggshells in seed starting trays. Beyond the calcium benefit already covered in other videos, the sharp edges of crushed shell created a physical barrier in seed trays that deterred the cutworms and slugs that target tender seedlings at their most vulnerable stage. Number 7. Used dishwater on outdoor plants. Mild soap residue in dishwater acts as a gentle insecticide against soft-bodied pests when poured around the base of plants, and the practice of reusing water for this purpose was simply standard household frugality during a decade when nothing was wasted, water included. Number 8. Knotting string at measured intervals for spacing. Without commercial seed spacing tools, families tied knots in a length of string at the exact intervals their crops required, stretching it down a row as a planting guide, a free alternative to any spacing tool sold today. Number 9. Storing seeds in cool, dry attic spaces rather than basements. Modern advice often suggests cool storage, but Depression-era farm wisdom specifically avoided damp basements, understanding that humidity, not just temperature, was the primary threat to stored seed viability, a distinction that still holds up under modern seed science. Number 10. Interplanting radishes as a row marker. Radishes germinate in days, far faster than slower crops like carrots or parsnips planted in the same row. The fast-sprouting radishes marked exactly where the row was before the slower seeds emerged, preventing accidental disturbance during early weeding, and the radishes themselves were harvested as a quick bonus crop. Number 11. Burying eggshells whole, not crushed, at the bottom of planting holes for tomatoes. A slower release version of the crushed shell calcium method, providing calcium over the entire growing season rather than in an initial burst, specifically aimed at preventing blossom end rot through the full fruiting period. Number 12. Using broken ceramic pottery shards as drainage material in the bottom of any container or raised bed. Nothing was thrown away. Broken dishware, which every household accumulated, became functional drainage material rather than waste. Number 13. Twisting tomato suckers off by hand rather than cutting with a tool. Hand pinching seals the wound through natural plant tissue response more cleanly than a cut, reducing the entry point for disease, a detail still recommended by some organic growers today, learned originally simply because most families did not own a dedicated pruning tool. Number 14. Saving the water from boiling vegetables to water the garden once cooled. Vegetable cooking water retains dissolved minerals and nutrients leached out during cooking. Pouring it on the garden once it cooled to room temperature returned those nutrients to the soil instead of down the drain. Number 15. Planting extra rows specifically for sharing or trading with neighbors. Depression-era gardens were rarely sized to exactly match a single family's needs. An extra row of whatever grew most reliably was planted specifically as currency for the informal trade economy that sustained many rural communities when cash was scarce. A jar of preserves for a basket of someone else's surplus squash. Number 16. Using burlap sacks soaked in water as a cooling method for root cellars and shaded storage areas in early fall, before the deep cold of winter made cellar storage effective on its own. Evaporative cooling from wet burlap dropped the temperature in a small enclosed space significantly during the transitional weeks of September and October. Number 17. Rotating chicken tractors. Small, movable chicken pens across garden beds between growing seasons. The chickens cleared weed seeds, ate pest larvae in the soil, and deposited manure directly onto the bed being prepared for the next planting, combining pest control, weeding, and fertilizing into a single zero-cost process using livestock most farm families already kept. Number 18. Drying herbs by hanging them upside down from kitchen rafters, rather than using any dedicated drying equipment. The rising heat from the kitchen stove, combined with airflow near the ceiling, created ideal drying conditions using a heat source the family was already generating for cooking. Number 19. Keeping a single, undated garden notebook across multiple growing seasons, rather than separate yearly journals. Depression-era farm women frequently recorded planting dates, weather patterns and outcomes in one continuous notebook spanning years, allowing them to directly compare this year's conditions against the same week in prior years, a practice that gave them a kind of predictive insight into their own specific plot of land that no general almanac could provide. 19 practices. None of them dramatic on their own. None of them the subject of a buried government document or a suppressed patent. Just the accumulated good sense of people who could not afford to waste anything, including time, including water, including a broken plate that still had a use as drainage material. This is the part of Depression-era gardening that does not make for a single dramatic headline, but it is arguably the most important part, because it represents not one trick, but an entire mindset. Nothing is waste until you have failed to find its second use. That mindset, more than any single method in this video, is what built gardens that fed families through 10 years, when almost nothing else in the country was working. If you want any one of these covered in full depth, tell us in the comments which one. We cover one new method every single day. And if you know someone who could use a reminder that the smallest habits are often the ones that matter most, share this with them.